Other questions or concerns? All right, again, this is a first reading, so we will vote on this at the next meeting. Next up is a Section 98B Benchmark Achievement Goals February update. Mr. McMahon.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Sislo. What is being passed down now, and I apologize, I had it out before, but I found an error, so we fixed it, so you're getting a new version coming down. This is the Section 98B requirement tied to the COVID learning plan that we had to submit, the COL plan, back at the beginning of the pandemic. Part of the requirements that we updated, and so in the fall, if you remember, we came to you with the benchmark goals that are required, the math and reading K-8, we use NWA, it's an approved assessment. We include high school in here as well. So you had the goals. In this document here, the goals are still included, and I just added in our fall and our winter assessments. We just completed the NWA assessments last week. So those were just recently updated. Shows you the growth from the fall to the winter. We'll do the same again in the summer. This is the same thing we've done the last 2 years. It's just part of the requirements to keep the assessments and the goals updated. This will also be posted on our website tonight or tomorrow as soon as possible and just in compliance. So you have that information, the public will have it as soon as it's posted.
Great. Any questions for Mr. McMahon?
If you do have any questions as you look over it throughout the week, don't hesitate to reach out to Mr. McMahon.
Next up, in the area of personnel and leadership, I need a motion to appoint the following person to the administrative position listed in the base salary listed effective January 20th, 2023, Jessica Kishiyama, for the Director of Early Childhood.
Moved by Heike.
Support by Macchio.
It's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the administrative position listed in the base salary listed effective February 20th, 2023. It's Jessica Kishiyama for the Director of Early Childhood. Questions or comments regarding this?
Mr. Sislo,
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
is this an immediate appointment? Effective immediately?
Actually, there's going to be a short transition of her into the position. She will start the position full-time under that salary on February 20th.
Thank you.
And this is a replacement of?
Correct.
This is not a new position?
Correct.
All right, it's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the administrative position listed in the base salary listed effective February 20th, 2023, Jessica Kishiyama for the Director of Early Childhood. Ms. Heike.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Rosenleacher?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up in the area of learning, environment, and culture, this is their book study of Why Meadow Died. I asked for everyone to read the foreword and the preface of the book for us to discuss this evening. And then we'll also have some discussion as far as how we'll proceed, as far as how much, if we do by chapters or by sections of the book. There's 4 sections of the book, and each section has 4 chapters. So we'll kind of, as we talk about it this evening, the forward and the preface, we'll also talk about how we'll move forward. So who would like to start in regards to the forward and the preface this evening?
I can start if you don't mind. So my takeaway from the book is that there were significant failings of the Broward County School District and their Promise program. For those that don't know, Nicholas Cruz shot an 18-year-old high school senior 9 times on the 3rd floor of the school. At the time of the shooting, the school had multiple bathrooms that were locked. The student's father describes the media being obsessed over what type of rifle the killer used. He also talked about how kids with behavior problems were forced into classrooms where he didn't believe they belonged. The parent blames the district for his daughter's death on incompetence because of political correctness. A quote from the book was that everyone looked the other way or swept disturbing behavior under the rug, making our schools more dangerous. Nationwide, there is pressure to reduce discipline when it comes to students with disabilities. Again, one of the quotes from the book was, I bet that he was special ed and should never have been in the school, but we take crazy kids and put them in normal classrooms. And then the other takeaway that I've gotten so far is that Mr. Pollack asserts that charter schools versus public schools actually enforce a code of conduct. But it's been an interesting read so far. Thank you.
Others?
So I originally read the book when this issue came up, and so I thought I would, because I listened to it, so I thought I would go back and reread it in print, because sometimes when you read something in print, you pick up on things that you may not have picked up on before. And first, let me say I appreciate that Mr. Pollack wrote this book because he wanted to understand what happened and why his daughter was murdered. So I appreciate that, and I feel sorry and send him my deepest regrets, and to everyone who was involved in all the victims and their families and friends. As you read it, he does mention that you could write several books about the failures that enabled his daughter's murder. You could write a book about the police and how their politically correct policy reduced juvenile arrests, and how that allowed, in the book, except for in a short section of the book, Mr. Pollack refers to the shooter as 18-1958. That's his inmate number, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Yes. So he says, you could write a book about the police and how their politically correct policy to reduce juvenile arrests allowed 18-1958 to keep a clean record, despite 45 police visits to his home. You could write a book about the mental health authorities and how they refused to institutionalize him 3 different times when he was suicidal, threatening to kill, and obsessed with buying a gun. So I think that, I think we have said many times when dealing with some of our situations is that it really does take an entire village. It takes all of us to be very vigilant to prevent this from happening. So while this book in particular focuses on Broward County, he does acknowledge that there were many failures along the lines, and as you guys continue to read, you will see some of those failures. He is very focused on what he calls the pressure to educate students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment possible. And he says it sounds nice in theory, but it means pushing troubled kids into normal classrooms rather than giving them the specialized services they need to actually address their issues. Kids with severe behavior problems are forced into classrooms where they don't belong, and principals have a strong reason to ignore their misbehavior. And he goes on to say this is bad for teachers who have little say. It's worse for regular students, and they have even less say. Sometimes his language I find a little troublesome. I don't like the idea of a normal classroom versus some other classroom, but that will change as time goes on in the book too. But I think that it's important to have this discussion because, at least in Michigan, I can't speak for the law in Florida, at least in Michigan, there's just not only quote-unquote pressure to educate students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment, but it's actually the state law. And so I think that we're going to have some opportunities to have a discussion as we continue to read this book about some of our obligations as a district, some of the limitations that we face, and I think too that as you continue to read in our past, just in the last probably 2 months, we'll be able to demonstrate some of the ways that we're very different from what happened in Broward County. So I look forward to continue to read the book.
Others?
I would like to echo what Mr. Farrow and Mrs. Heike has shared about the text. In addition, looking at some very recent information, because I still belong to my state organizations through education, that we are receiving and continue to receive, and changes legislatively that are going on with students with disabilities. And I apologize, I actually have an article for everyone that I failed to bring with me this evening, that just talks about changes that they're making in terms of specifically students with disabilities and discipline. So looking at that alongside the text as we read on, I think will be very helpful to all of us.
Thank you.
Mr. Sisler?
Yeah, that's right.
I guess I was taking a little bit of a different look at, I get emotional when I read all this. I think all of us do because of the subject matter. In the very beginning, the sister talks about, she got a call. And the author reads, "This book is in your hands because I don't want you or anyone else to feel that way." I still remember being not in Milan. I'm on like 2 miles away when we had a bomb threat. And both my children were here. And it was just a threat. Mr. Gearbock did, and we did everything perfect. But I have two very different children. And one was fine. It was all good. I got, comfort. I have safe people. I know what I'm doing. My other child was mortified. And I just remember that feeling of, what do you do? How do you do? I cannot imagine when it's a real, going through that. I just hope that, hindsight's 20/20, so I hope their hindsight can be our foresight as we read the book.
Thank you. Others? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Okay. Well, I wanted to, I had actually flagged some of the same sections that Michelle had already kind of lifted out. This is just the preface, and I'm actually 2/3 of the way into the book, so I know that the language does change, but as a career educator, I really had a visceral sort of skin-crawling reaction to his uses of the term normal classrooms and crazy children or psychopaths, and that's just never going to sit. And I had to remind myself to refocus on who the author of the book was. So thank you, Michelle, for pointing that out, because we cannot, as we read this, lose sight of the fact that this is written by a person who has suffered an unimaginable loss and an unimaginable trauma within a community. So that's been helpful for me to just kind of refocus on as I read, despite my heavy disagreement with some of his terminology or characterizations. One of the other things that was popping out of the preface for me was the term politically correct policies. It comes up a number of times. And so I was trying to understand the author's use of that terminology, and I looked up the Merriam-Webster and the Cambridge Dictionary definitions, and political correctness has shifted in its meaning, especially of late, but dictionary says it's the belief that language or practices which could be offensive to others, especially regarding race, sex, gender, etc., should be avoided. And yet when I read this use of the term political correctness, it comes across to me as much more of a pejorative or an insult or a detraction of policies that in my regard are much more focused on not simply avoiding offending marginalized groups of people, but protecting them. And I really think the more proper term for these policies would be anti-racist policies or anti-discrimination policies. So I look forward to seeing the book develop more, and I'm hoping that the author will clarify his meaning in terms of, of those political correct policies that he's referring to. But yeah, I've got a whole flag system, and there's a lot to digest. So, thank you, Mr. Sisler.
Sure. Yeah, obviously the preface, the foreword and the preface were meant to set the book up. The foreword is very powerful. It was written by a brother because he got the call. He heard it over the news that there was a shooting, and he tried to call his sister, and she didn't answer. So he drove to find her, and it's very powerful. It's good that it's the foreword. I think it's helpful for us to refer back to it as we read through the book. Because, like you all said, this is a real issue that the Pollock family has undergone and wants to make better. And obviously, there's various ideas within this book that we're going to discuss that have been set up so far for us to read. So I'm looking forward to reading it as well. I've also skipped ahead to see where it leads. So, others? Ms. Macchio?
There were several things that Mrs. Heike said that I had also written down about the book, and the one that's kind of screamed out to me was the unbelievable amount of police visits to a home, right? And when things like this happen, you know, everybody stands back and says, what? You know, it's really hard to fathom. And I do agree with perspective is everything, and we can never assume that we could put ourselves in somebody's shoes, you know, who's lived through something like this. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, I thought it was a very strong opening, hearing from family and the magnitude of that loss, which is just really hard to conceive. So it's, you know, there's so many factors that go into a situation like this. I can't even imagine how much depth and research it would take to figure out the root of everything. Is there really, you know, there's never one cause, you know, it's multiple factors. And when Mrs. Heike said, it really shows right out of the gate in this book that that community and people being aware of things going on and working together, especially when it comes to mental health issues, is so important. And I think we see that today. Not much has changed. I think about, you know, the things that are brought up in this book, and I think, wow, have we made strides since then? As a nation, I'm not really sure that we have. But anyway, yeah, very powerful so far.
Can I also say, Mr. Cicillo, as we're reading this, especially over the next 2 weeks, I want everyone to remember that on the 14th, so next week, a week from yesterday, it'll be the 5-year anniversary of this tragedy too. So keep that in mind as you're reading the next few chapters, that this is still very raw. And 18-1958, I get the number right, his sentencing just occurred late last year. So this is still very raw for a lot of people.
All right, so with that, I mean, do you guys have a preference on how we proceed as far as like 2 chapters at a time? That's kind of what we did with the last book study. Do you guys have a preference?
I'm good with 2.
Okay. We can see how that goes. So for the next meeting, we'll discuss chapters 1 and chapters 2, see how that goes from there, and we'll go from there. All right. That brings us back to public comment. And just a reminder that this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It's not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you'll be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers, but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who would like to address the board? Are there any public members who would like to address the board?
Andrea Bennick. For those of you who are reading along with this book study and maybe don't have an understanding of all of the acronyms that come along with special education, IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and that's a federal law. and that indicates that students with disabilities have the right to an education as much as non-disabled students do. In Michigan, we, like Michelle said, are obligated to have the least restrictive environment, and every student who has a disability is eligible for an individualized education plan, and that means that the least restrictive environment is individual for every student. So some students may have classrooms that look different than a non-disabled peer. Some students have an inclusion act where they are fully included. Milan is a fully inclusive district, meaning that students with disabilities are with their general education population the majority of the time. So there are limitations as to what kinds of things can happen with students with disabilities, what kind of placements they have, what kind of education they receive. And so I think it's important to note that Florida is very different from Michigan. And I know that because I have people who live in Florida that I know who have kids with disabilities who actually bemoan Florida's education system for their students with disabilities. It is very different. Michigan is kind of sought out in the disabled population because of their highly inclusive policies and laws that are in place. But to keep in mind that an individualized education plan is meant to be just that, individualized. So what my student who has a disability receives looks very different even though he has a classmate with the exact same diagnoses. Their services that they receive are very, very different because they have very different needs. In the high school, what students have for their services received looks very different than somebody who may have the exact same diagnosis. So that individualized piece is a highly important component to keep in mind as educators and as the general population so that you have an understanding of what that looks like here in Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others?
Hello, I'm Jan Kiger. I would like to welcome Ms. Murray and Ms. Rosenleacher to their elected terms. I encourage you to reach out to your fellow board members for guidance and some direction. There's a wealth of knowledge there for you to take advantage of. One of the great things about living in Milan is that this community as a whole recognizes that the people they elect need to have the ability to look beyond their own self-interest and their own self-promotion to tackle the complex and to do what's best for our students and our district. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Good evening again, Rachel Hobbs. As I was walking in, I was handed the statement by somebody that's anonymous, and I was asked to read it for them. I just hope that my reading skills are well enough tonight to do this statement some justice. I have written this statement and rewritten this too many times to track it. I thought for sure my first time addressing the board would be for our bullying problem or lack of protection for our special ed kids, but no, I stand here as an elementary sexual assault survivor. First time I've ever said that out loud. The door was closed for me when I watched him walk off in handcuffs. I was groomed by my gym teacher as well as 4 other girls, and what happened to us was not okay. We were young, we did not know better. We were victims of somebody who was supposed to protect us while out of our parents' care. But for months I've listened to these books being read, and I've listened to the board trying to advocate for these books. You don't speak for me as a survivor. I am mortified listening to these pages being read off. If we would have had access to those books then, we would have never said anything because we would have thought it was normal. But as a predator, and a predator would still be on the loose. But these books are absolutely grooming. This made me reach out to other girls, sending them our YouTube links and getting their takes on this. They even agree that these books are absolutely horrifying. Unless you've been in this situation, please don't pretend to sympathize. These books aren't okay. My abuser was able to do this because he convinced me to trust him and to keep secrets from my parents. You have teachers in this district that might think that they're doing the right thing by offering to keep secrets for students, their nicknames and pronouns, but the truth is the teachers are unintentionally grooming these children to make it easier for child predators like my abuser to target them. We are paving the way for one person like my abuser to come in and convince your child that it is normal to have intimate, secretive relationships and with adults at school. We must do better as a district to protect our children. We should not, under any circumstances, be introducing the idea to children that there are secrets that they should be keeping from their parents. They shouldn't trust their parents, they shouldn't trust their parents with things that are going on in their lives, and that there are adults in the school who are better suited to confide in. It is inevitable that this will lead to destroying innocence of someone's childhood. By hearing my story, you should consider yourself warned. If you do not take drastic steps to ensure that your staff is not encouraging this behavior and another child's innocence is being destroyed like mine, we will be sure every one of you are prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and everyone in the community is made aware of your stubbornness and dismissive attitude that contributed to a Milan student being victimized by a sexual predator, as is an indirect result of your failure to change these heinous and irresponsible, reckless policies.
Thank you for the comment.
Mr. Sisto?
Yes.
I would just like to clarify that the abusive situation mentioned in that statement did not occur in Milan area schools. Thank you.
Hello, Kirk Demars. Appreciate community member sharing this book with you guys to read. I've got it. I look forward to starting to read it myself. I apologize I haven't started on pace with you guys yet, but I guess not the best terminology to say I look forward to starting to read this book, because unfortunately it's not something that any of us want to read about, really. We don't want it to exist in our world, but unfortunately it's becoming too common. My urge, and maybe to all the board members as you read this, because personally, just sitting in the crowd, and maybe I'm trying to read between lines too much, but from your comments so far, many of you seem like you're walking into the book with skepticism or with your defenses up. Because a community member brought it to you and said, hey, we have a lot of similarities to what happened in this book. Regardless of whether that was delivered in jest or you felt it was, I urge you to read this book trying to walk in with a blank slate, not with your defenses up. For instance, tonight we have a basketball game going on. People are able to access this building and enter that gym without being checked, without actually paying for a ticket. I know that for a fact. It happens, okay? There are loopholes in how things are done, not just here. I'm not pointing the finger just at but it happens here. So don't think that I'm mentioning it to you because I think, oh, Milan area schools is the only school district on the planet that this stuff goes on. All I'm telling you is that we have loopholes in how things are going on. And if an innocent kid can figure it out and figure out how to get into a game without paying, you better believe me that, and it has happened because you're reading a book about it, somebody that is not mentally well, or somebody that is just mad at a peer or a group of peers, can figure out a way to get in this building, whether it's during school or after school, to hurt other kids or adults if they don't like one of you or one of their teachers. So I'm urging you to please read this without your defenses up. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Apparently, I'm just going to keep going after Kirk, and he's going to do a much better job of saying the things that I'm going to say. But yeah, a lot of what he just said is strongly what I was thinking. It's really disappointing. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but it almost sounded like you guys some of you have decided to go into this book study as more of a critique of the author versus actually reading the content and trying to see if there's anything we can actually learn from that situation. It's really unfortunate that your personal political views are so strong and your desire to be stubborn and divisive with us is so strong that takes precedence over you trying to grasp any value out of this book. Just to clarify, he didn't just kill the author's daughter, he killed 17 people and he injured 17 more. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Also, that comment, the crazy kids and put them in classrooms, was not a statement by the author, it was actually a quote from one of the teachers that worked with him throughout this whole process. Man, if you didn't know better, I'd think you guys were interviewing for a job at Stoneman Douglas. Like, what the crap? There was so much going on in this book that teachers and staff members of Milan are telling us is happening every day in these buildings. The fact that you guys are sitting there so arrogantly stating that there's nothing for you to take away from this is mind-blowing to me. I don't know if maybe they just aren't sharing that with you because of who you are, which is something you should consider. Maybe in your echo chamber, you're not hearing this, but I am. I know several of the people in this audience are. They're hearing it from the people that work in your buildings, and some of them that don't because they refuse to work in that environment. It's happening. This isn't just about special needs kids. That is one aspect of the situation in Parkland, but that's not all it was. It's also about the teachers being handcuffed and the administration feeling like their leaders did not want them to implement certain disciplinary strategies. There's a lot more to this than just special needs. I strongly suggest that you stop getting hooked up on terminology and you start thinking about the bigger picture of this, because terminology did not kill those kids.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? Thank you for those comments this evening. Since our student board reps are not here, we'll go on to superintendent comments. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Hello, my name is Soche Blauvelt, and no need to apologize, I was nervous to stand up. My name is Soche Blauvelt, I'm a Sowards, that's my maiden name, and I'm actually a Milan alumni and a mother. I have 2 kids who are currently attending at Milan, and I have been trying to educate myself and hear both sides and understand the situation that's really going on in our educational program right now and what's being allowed and given access to our students. And as a mom, I find it deeply shocking. Not just as a mom, but as a woman who has been a victim of sexual assault and in and out of a school situation. I know that these books that have been brought forward a couple times are graphic, borderline pornographic, and as someone who has been a victim, when you are going through healing in that stage, you are totally repulsed by some of the actions that are not only written but displayed and pictured for students to see. And I saw that there was a comment made previously that people who are opposed to these books make people who have had sexual assault feel shamed for speaking out. In reality, I would never want my kids to have these books because I view them as sexual assault. My dad told me one of the best things when I was learning how to drive. He said, don't get overconfident, because when you're overconfident, you're more likely to make mistakes. And sometimes it won't just be you in the vehicle. And I would really urge you to take a look at what direction we're going in as a community with our education, with students, with their minds who have their entire lives before them, and realize that every single one of those students is currently in your vehicle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Are there others?
Hello, my name is Anna Sowards, and I'm actually Soche's mother. I just wanted to just give a couple of tidbits of wisdom. A wise man named Solomon said, "Do not awaken passion before it's time." Little boys who find pornographic books and magazines in trash cans or in their father's drawers or other places lose innocence. Well, to put these on display in libraries, that's causing them to lose innocence. And some people might suggest that, you know, it's going to happen. This is the world we're living in, so we might as well have them be on display in a safe environment. But my question is, are we causing them to lose their innocence prematurely? We are all held responsible for what we teach our children and our grandchildren and what we teach our students. I'll tell you, I'm an instructor, and I take it very seriously when I teach my students about life, and not only the subject matter, but about life. And I encourage them, because I happen to teach international students, and I tell them that they need to live with conviction. Conviction. And even though many of them are from a different background than I am, that I'm from, and even a different religion, I show them respect. I show them respect. I think that there's a way that we can teach the subject matter and show the students, demonstrating as well as teaching them, to show respect for one another. And I think that we don't have to put it on display. We cannot awaken passion before it's time. Second thing, I wanted to just mention that I appreciate Ms. Kristen Freight's takeaway from the book. She took that content matter and applied it to her own experience. And that's a great takeaway, you know? I mean, I have children in this school, and I think about it. I've heard about how the campus has been closed, and I immediately start praying. And it's not even at a school where I have any of my family, but I start praying because I want all the kids to be protected. And I imagine what I would feel if it were my kids. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there others?
Why not, right?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Brittany Shepard. This is my first meeting, so I kind of just wanted to get a feel for, the way you guys act and the way you guys act. And I commend the parents for coming here and speaking their truth and what they're passionate about. And I respect you guys because you are the people who are helping us teach our children. So we have to find a way to work together. I'm an ER nurse, and I see a lot of different walks of life, and how education changes people, and it makes them, if nobody taught you something, then how do you know how to do it? They're called health inequities or disparities, and it really starts at home and it starts at school, because they are with you guys, they're with our teachers in our schools
for so many hours out of the week that we need to make sure that we're all cohesively working together. And that's just what I hope for. My daughter's in first grade, and it worries me that, every school is going to have their differences, and their things that they got to work on, but we got to work together about it. So my question was coming from like a research base, are the kids who have access to these books fundamentally able to understand the concepts that they are reading? I get that our culture is over-sexualized, and everywhere they look, it's sexual something. And I feel like having it in our library isn't really a place that it needs to be. Education needs to be learning, if it's fantasy, smut is a big thing right now. Reading it at 35 is something different reading it at 18. I was not, I don't know. It's different when you're younger and you have all these hormones coming at you, and I don't want kids to get lost in that because it's already overdone so much. So if we can just kind of, keep an eye on it, and, or if somebody does have questions, is the librarian saying like, hey, what's going on? Do you need to talk to a social worker? Are they having these conversations? Because it's more than just like, here's this book and all this information, and there's no one to guide you of how to use it. So that's where my thought kind of comes in, because there's obviously a disconnect from what I've been seeing, just from posts and stuff like that. So I would just, I want there to be like a middle ground or a gray area that like we can have conversations and both feel heard and be seen and, actually have something done. So yeah, I respect you guys and I respect you guys, and I think that we need to find a way to work together. So, thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
My name is Annette Tellis. Bear with me a moment. Wasn't planning on talking. Okay. So these kids, all kinds of kids, different races, ethnicities, different backgrounds, they come to you. And the first line is at home, everything, and their home upbringing can be good, bad, and otherwise. Being that I work in a prison, and I've seen numerous files on these individuals, that there's so many ways that as mandatory reporters of teachers, different things, that, an example is, there was this one child that he exposed himself to another girl on the playground. Why would he do something like this? This kid was 7, maybe, and I think, okay, his mother was abusing him. It's what he knew. You take these kids, and then as they're growing up, if they're not learning what's right at home, please let the school be helping them, because that's the next place they are, most likely. Don't have things that's going to teach them wrong. Okay, I'll use myself. I was molested at 11. I didn't say anything to anybody. Then when I was 14, I started having an eating disorder, went to therapy and everything, and as I got older. But if I didn't have that either and decided to talk, and then I'm reading these books, then I'm thinking it's normal. No, it's not normal. And then you have, when the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, you really see it when you're in the visiting room of a prison. That you think, you poor thing, that you actually understand why they are the way they are. You had no chance. It's at your home life. Let the school be something good and positive for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Lake Foster again. I just want to say, kids in high school, we're not dumb. Stop thinking we're idiots. We understand that this stuff is not normal. We're not just, we have a brain. We're in high school. We understand what's in these books. We know what's happening isn't right. We know that it's bad. We know that it shouldn't happen, but it does. And if we don't know about what happens, then we're just not going to be prepared for the world. We're just not going to be ready for anything. And that's what you're supposed to do in high school, is get ready for the world. If you're not ready, this will happen even more. We know what's going on. We know that all these books, we don't think, oh, that kid got raped. That's normal. Everybody does that. No. We understand it. But these parents don't understand that we understand it. They keep on underestimating us. But we know what's going on. And these books should not be removed. Because there's nothing wrong with them. Everything you read in there, you probably know. Every kid in high school. We're not innocent. We're in high school. We know all this stuff. We know what happens. We know it. I can assure you that 99% of kids in high school have heard everything in those books before. They're not learning new things from those books. They know what happens. All the books are is a book. You're not changing any kid's opinions.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? All right. Now we'll move on to superintendent comments. Mr. Yearbaugh.
Yes, thank you. Over the past couple of weeks, we've had numerous student musicians perform at the MSBO Middle School Festival and the MSBO High School Festival. Honors included Henry Kleiber on the trumpet, Joey Lubke on percussion, and Charlie Megason on trumpet being selected for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra Middle School Honors Band. Milan High School band members had one of their finest days at the district festival competition, with all instrumentalists earning medals and most events qualifying for state-level competition. Congratulations to all of our band students who attended festival. Last Saturday, 4 Milan choir performances, including a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ensemble, a high school soloist, a high school chamber choir tenor bass ensemble, and a high school chamber choir soprano alto ensemble, earned the highest rating of excellent. The rubric is demanding and focuses on age-appropriate skill demonstration, and again, we want to offer our congratulations to the students who performed in the choir festival. The Milan High School bowling team held a very successful bowl-a-thon on January 21st, and we want to thank all of the folks in the district who participated in that event and helped with the fundraising. February is Career Technical Education Month. At the February 22nd board meeting, the board will be recognizing our CTE students. The high school will be providing more information to the students, but we want all of our CTE students to come to the first few minutes of the February 22nd board meeting to be recognized. The staff enjoyed a very successful professional development day on February 3rd. Each building provided professional development specific to their staff. I would like to clarify some statements that were made about certain books during public comments at the January 25th board meeting. First, the book, The Bluest Eye, is at the middle school as a professional development book for the teachers and has never been on the shelf for student circulation. The book, The Lovely Bones, is at the middle school as a professional development book for the teachers and has never been on the shelf for student circulation. Discover the Universe has never been at Paddock Elementary School. When it was entered into the system and placed at the high school, the default is to have Paddock Elementary School checked, and we, in error, did not uncheck Paddock Elementary School. Again, the book Discover the Universe has never been on a shelf or available to students at Paddock Elementary School. At the January 25th board meeting, a question was asked about FOIA requests. The district has designated me as the primary FOIA coordinator. However, emails sent to foia@milanareaschools.org actually get delivered to multiple individuals in the district. This allows us to make sure that Freedom of Information Act requests are processed in a timely manner. If a FOIA request was made regarding me personally, then one of the other district employees trained in FOIA requests would handle that specific request. The District Communication Committee met on January 30th. The committee reviewed the progress being made on their previous recommendations. The committee also discussed the plan for the future of the committee, and another meeting has been scheduled to begin the next phase of work. There are plans for staff shortages. Milan Area Schools currently works with several universities to accept student teachers. Not all districts do. We do that because we know that that's a good way to bring young teachers into our fold and for them to see the positive benefits of working at Milan Area Schools. We also accept social workers, and other departments accept internships with students through universities for the same purpose. Milan Area Schools, each building has a everyday building substitute. We do that not only to help cover classes that we don't have substitutes for, but we also do that to bring staff and young teachers into the district for the possibility of future hiring. The Washtenaw Intermediate School District, at the request of the 9 superintendents in the county, is also developing a Grow Your Own program where we will be working with universities to help develop a process for teacher certification that is part university work and part paid internship in one of our 9 districts, and then will lead to employment within the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Mr. McMahon.
Yep, I just have a couple grant updates for you. I have resubmitted our robotics and our Section 41 grants. We submit them in the fall and they come back to us, and in both cases here they came back with more funds for a number of reasons that can happen. But they've been resubmitted, not approved yet, but sent in. The robotics grant is just a little over $16,000 to support our programs at all 4 buildings. And the Section 41 grant got kicked up to just over $14,000. And Section 41 is technically bilingual, but that also goes to our EL population. So it's in addition to Title III funds. So we're really happy to have that money. It's not approved yet, but we can start spending on it. And also MDE just like recently, within the last week, opened up 4 new grants focused on mental health, academic support, school safety that we have to dig into. It's sort of brand new pot of money that just came out, and they just sort of threw it at us. So we got a little bit of time to start digesting that. Krista and I and Brian will be working to get through those applications soon. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Now on to board member comments.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
First, I want to make sure that the audience understands that I do feel the grief and anger with respect to the book that we are reading as a board. I'm invested in the reading, and I am certainly going to read it with an open mind. So if I gave the impression that I'm not invested, that's just not accurate. A couple other comments that I have regarding our budget. It appears Governor Whitmer plans to propose another increase in per pupil spending for K-12 students and increases in public universities and community colleges. Her proposal is likely to include $160 million for free breakfast and lunch for 1.4 million kids in grades K through 12. That would mean an additional 18 million meals served and $45.3 million in additional funds for school districts. You may recall that the federal government had expanded the free meal program in schools during the COVID emergency to include all kids, not just those families with lower incomes. However, that expansion expired this past summer. If all that transpires, another review of our budget and future budgets will be needed. I missed the last board meeting, so welcome to Sarah Murray. I look forward to working with you. At the last meeting, there were some comments online that were specific to one of our students. I am confident that none of the online comments were from members of the Milan community. That said, the online comments included the student needing to be knocked down, attacks on this person's hygiene, and attacks on this person's future parenting. So I implore all of us to, if we read or see these types of comments online about any of our students, to please call it out as appalling and unacceptable. Also, just a quick note about the consortium. Applications for the consortium are due February 17th. For those students that are interested in the consortium for the next year, please be sure to fill out the 2023-24 Milan student application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Others?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Rosenleisure.
I just want to take a moment to thank our Sex Education Advisory Board. What a great group of people. I was here earlier to hear the second public meeting on the PADAC body safety curriculum. I think they did an outstanding job finding a curriculum that meets the needs in hopes to begin early education on keeping our youngest students safe. So thank you to all of them that put that time in.
I agree. Others?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
I'll just take a moment to kind of echo what Mr. Farrow was saying earlier. This is just the preface and the foreword of the book, so we haven't gotten into the meat of what this author is going to continue into describing. So absolutely, if the critique that I gave tonight landed somehow insensitively, I recognize that, and I will endeavor to bring some comments about the upcoming chapters that are, additionally targeted to our specific situations here in Milan. But I also want to say that in addition to being committed to reading this book openly, that also does mean that I'm not going to shy away from noting problematic language, calling out bias, conjecture, unsupported opinions, because that's what it means to me to read a piece of literature critically. And so I thought I would just quickly share what my flags are noting. So I have different colors, a blue for potential bias, green for agreement, which there's quite a bit of green in here, pink for problematic language, as I addressed this evening, purple for things that make me question or the things that aren't unsure. I've actually been in the index footnotes quite a bit and have read many of the referenced material in addition to the book itself. So in future discussion, I'll make sure that I bring some of that with me as well. And then moving on to community things, I had the honor this past weekend of volunteering at the Semla Quiz Bowl competition at Saline Middle School this past Saturday. So I just wanted to take a moment to lift up our 6th and 7th grade competitors, Coach Murray, and the numerous parents who were up early on that Saturday morning to get out there and compete with our fellow Semla member districts. The teams for Quiz Bowl, if you're not familiar, are mixed. So they take students from all the districts and they intermix them on teams together. So when the students from Milan show up, they get placed at a table on a team with students from all other districts. So it adds a real layer of complexity for the students because they're used to practicing with their own Milan people, and then they get out and they have to work with other students from other districts, and it was really amazing to watch them rise to that occasion. So the students then compete in 3 rounds, and there's a final bracket at each grade level, and Milan students were a part of both the 6th and 7th grade first place teams. We didn't have 8th graders this year, but I just want to say congrats again to the MMS Quiz Bowl team. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Others?
Mr. Zislo?
Ms. Freight.
I wanted to point out that we, as the WASB Exec Board met and kind of have some more dates now, and normally we have a legislative coffee in January, and due to the change in legislators and such, we weren't able to get that going together. However, we will be having one on February 27th. They're typically at 7:30. They last till about 9, and that's hopefully going to actually have food this time, but they also have a Zoom link. So if you're coming in person, you actually get to have food, and then there'll be the Zoom. I unfortunately will not be able to be there because my daytime job is subbing, so I'm down. So it kind of prevents me this time. We're also, I apologize, I'm trying to pull up the accurate. We're also looking forward to having, I need to get to with you, Mr. Gearbaugh, with having a student forum. I guess they've done it in years past, and the thought would be to have a board representative and the superintendent and we'll discuss some things and have some students get together to voice some opinions on things that are going on and move forward with that. That is not hopefully until next fall, because there's going to be some in-depth planning going, so I'll be touching base with you. We're also hoping to have some advocacy training. We don't have the date yet, and that's more for all of us as board members. To be able to, I think I discussed previously that the board is hoping to have a very loud and helpful voice moving forward now that we have the new legislators and everything. So we're hoping to get some training from some professionals as to how we go about doing that the best way, so that we can ensure that our voice is being heard and working in accordance with the legislators. So that's my WASB get together. When I have that date, I'll be more than happy to share it with all of you. They're still trying to coordinate some speakers and training on that. We also will be, I think you guys will be receiving, my fellow board members, an email from Melissa. She's the secretary. I don't know if you guys have already received that. The MASB exec board has they renominate in January. We have to put together a nomination committee. And they generally ask if anybody would like to be on that. They try to get someone from every district, and then they put together the group that they want. Due to COVID, I've now been, this is like the second time that I've been on, because it kind of fell at a weird time and we did that. I think we're still kind of hoping of maybe moving things up, because they have a past president, a president, and everybody kind of slides up one. But you'll be informed of that. So if you're getting an email from Melissa, she's the secretary of the MASB exec, and she's asking if you have time. It's one meeting, just so you know. One meeting to say, hey, we would recommend this person. No obligation, they only need 3, but just so you're aware why that email is coming. And then there will be elections at the March meeting, and I'll be bringing that slate of people to you as well. I'm excited about our sports people doing well. I got to participate in part of the bowling stuff, which is really great. I missed out on the quiz bowl. It's one of my things I still want to do. And I'm excited because our choir and band did do rather exceptional, and so that's really great. And I do officially, I missed my meeting, want to welcome Miss Murray and Betty Rosen-Leacher. It's nice to have you both here. And I'm very excited, so I thank Mr. Sislo and Mr. Gearbod working forward with our CTE recognition. It's always great when we have our students here, and I think it's great to put light on the different options we give to our students to go different paths and make sure that they have a career plan. So I'm very excited for that at the next meeting. I appreciate the time and effort in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freight. Ms. Heike?
It's been so long that I think we forgot that we had a big red board chat. So I want to thank everyone who attended the big red board chat. I thought we had a great conversation about what's happening in our schools, the steps that we're taking as a board and as a district, and discussed, I think, expectations of parents, and had a conversation about how the board and how I shouldn't say the board, had a discussion about communications that go out when we're in the midst of lockdowns, and had a discussion about various types of lockdowns. So I thought it was very productive. We did get a very good question about what parents can do to help. And I said this at the board, or the Big Red Board chat, and I want to say it here to all of you. And I think that this is very timely given the communication that went out yesterday about the swatting incidents. I think that one of the biggest things that parents can do right now is talk to your students about, and across the board, and I shouldn't say just parents, what we as adults can do to help the schools and to help our students is to have a conversation with them about how serious these situations are, and that while you may mean a threat as a joke, or you may hear people joking about it, it's not funny, and the school district will take it very seriously, and we will act swiftly, and sometimes what some people may believe harshly, because we take it very seriously and we have to. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we can all do right now, is if you have, if you have a student that looks up to you or comes to you for guidance, that's one of the things we really need to be telling our students, is that this isn't funny, and we'll take it as serious as it is. The other thing I want to say is there is some movement in the state legislature to repeal the third grade reading bill or reading law. Some of you might not know what that is. We've talked about it at some board meetings, but there is a statute that requires third graders who are not reading at grade level at third grade to be held back. And there are some other ways that parents and the school administration can deal with those situations. And there is a lot of research out there on the harm that holding students back can cause. And I think there was even some state senator the other day said that maybe sometimes kids just need a kick in the pants, and if they think they're going to be held back, this will encourage them to work harder. I had a third grader who didn't read at grade level, and it certainly wasn't because he didn't work hard. It was because there were other things going on that needed to be addressed. I don't want to share too much of his personal information, but there are lots of reasons that children in third grade may not be reading at grade level, and it certainly isn't because they are not working hard or their parents are working hard or the teachers aren't working hard. And holding kids back can cause a lot of harm. I say all of that because I encourage all of you that if you feel the same way I feel about this law, that you should reach out to your legislators, tell them how important it is to you to repeal this statute, because I think the House is going to start moving on it soon too. I want to apologize to all the community members who also received death threats and threats of other violence. It's not acceptable. It doesn't matter what side it comes from or what side it's directed to. It's absolutely unacceptable. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. In response to the suggestions we were given on how to handle death threats, I did put my big girl pants on. I showed up at the next meeting. I continued to discuss, and I let the community know what was happening behind the scenes. I will not stop fighting for marginalized students in this community. I just won't do it. I was very open with the community about where I stand on many of these issues when I ran for the board the second time, and quite frankly, the first time. And I'm not going to stop fighting for those same values. I did file police reports, and resigning is not an option. I am not going to resign over this. I ran for the school board, I was elected by this community, and I'm going to continue to represent this community in the way that I've been very open to everyone about my personal views. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Heike. Ms. Macchio?
I did first want to share that the school board is going to be supporting again the downtown read-around organized by Mrs. Tuesley and Milan Main Street for the month of February. The book for this year is The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson, and she is a diverse, very highly decorated and honored author, and very versatile because she writes kids' books all the way up to adult books. So on the 25th of February, looks like it'll be Mrs. Murray and I and her daughter trying to get families caught reading downtown. So if you aren't familiar with the downtown read-around, there are storyboards along Main Street, so kids and their families can follow the story from the first page to the last. And we're excited to try to find some people out there enjoying that. Well, our plan right now is to be there on February 25th on a Saturday from 11 to 12. And if we catch you reading, then you get a copy of the book, which is beautiful. And I will say, Mrs. Tuesley, during the jury winter days, those storyboards are so fresh and colorful and springy. It's been great. So anyway, so we hope to see lots of kids out during that time. I also have a statement that I would like to read, and I do not like reading things off of a paper, but if you're like me and you start talking and you get off on tangents, then you'll appreciate that I have to do that, but it's not my nature. So thank you for listening. I just started my 11th year on this board, and like I said during my candidate forum, I might be elected by adults, but the work that I do is for kids. And after 30 years in education, I can't think of a time when this sentiment has been more important for school boards to live by. And honestly, not just school boards. It's true for all of us. Our entire community has the ability to enact positive change for our students and for public education as a whole, and we cannot be afraid to speak up. And this is what I see here in Milan in regards to that sentiment. And after decades in the field of education, I can pretty confidently say I think I know what I'm talking about. Our staff is extremely hardworking and goes above and beyond for kids. They double down all the time on their efforts of continuous improvement. The board has talked about that many times over the years, and are in the trenches implementing what's best for our district during some of the most challenging years that education and this world have ever seen. Our administrators, our superintendent and our assistant superintendent are a top-notch team. I have worked for a lot of administrators and I see a lot come and go over my years. And in Milan, we have some of the best leaders in the business. They lead by example, and they want what is best for kids, and they work a gazillion hours trying to make that happen. And this board, this is a group of honest and dedicated individuals who aren't here for glory or recognition. They're here to lift this district up, to make difficult decisions under sometimes brutal circumstances, and to support all students in realizing their individual potential. I know that they're inspired and energized by what they see going on in our classrooms every day, and I am a better person for having served with them. However, despite the dedication and all the good work being done, and it doesn't mean there's no more work to do, especially lately, the truth is that there's a lot of negativity being hurled around here and in our nation, and it has damaging ripple effects. I can tell you as a teacher, that's where it goes. It has damaging ripple effects on our children and our staff, and we are fooling ourselves if we think it does not. The toxicity that I am referencing is not sustainable. I've seen it in my own district to disastrous ends, a mess. And so at some point, we all have to ask ourselves, what are we here to accomplish, and for whom are we doing it? I feel like the answers to that have been drowned out and watered down by many extraneous forces working against public education and not with it or for it. There's no low that is apparently too low nowadays when it comes to attacks on public schools, on teachers, on board members, and really just on people in general, as we heard here tonight, sometimes even students, as we sadly witnessed with one of ours. For someone like me, who can be pretty thin-skinned, and some of you may relate, sometimes overly sensitive and emotional, the heaps and heaps of negativity, and to be frank, the blatant lies, have taken their toll. Maybe more so since I am both a school board member and a career public school elementary educator. And the truth is, we all have a line in the sand, a hard stop, when it comes to what we're willing to accept, when it comes to ourselves and our families, and in my case, to a job that I love. Once those lines are crossed, decisions have to be made about how much someone like me is willing and able to take. My line in the sand has been crossed, and I've made that gut-wrenching decision. I will be resigning from this board, effective at the end of this month. I am sad, and I am sick over it. But I look forward to serving our community through the other organizations that I volunteer with here in Milan, and by continuing to promote literacy, accessibility to books, and a love of reading, which anyone who knows me has been my passion in life for a long time now. Thank you to the voters who put me in this seat twice, along with the other 6 people sitting here that you put your confidence in. Our most recent board election was this community's chance to use their vote as their voice, and they delivered a strong message about what people and values they want representing Milan area schools. I know Mrs. Rosenleacher and Mrs. Murray and the rest of the board will carry that message forward in their hearts and their minds in all the hard work they will do. I'm proud to have had a front row seat to witness how hard this district works for the students, families, staff, and community that we all care deeply about. No districts, no people are perfect. And yes, there is always more work to be done. But I hope Brian and this board can continue to keep their time and energy and focus on kids and on the job they were elected to do. You always have, and I'm confident you always will. It's been an absolute honor to serve this community that I love with selfless, well-intentioned, compassionate people like yourselves and those who sat here before you. I'd like to thank the board, I'd like to thank Brian and Ryan, and most of all, I would like to thank Milan. Thank you, Mr. Sislo.
Thank you, Ms. Macchio. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it. So in regards to the announcement this Ms. Macchio just made, communication will come out from Mr. Gearbaugh next week in regards to the time frame for a replacement. In general, we'll be looking for applications to be submitted through Friday, March 3rd. Then at the March 8th board meeting, we'll have a time to organize interviews for those interested in the hopes of conducting those interviews at the March 22nd board meeting. So look for that communication to come from Mr. Gearbaugh next week in regards to filling an open board position. As Ms. Macchio stated, her resignation will be February 28th, and the law requires us to fill that within 30 days. So again, the hope would be to fill that at our March 22nd board meeting. The committees, the committees have been formed for the board at this time. Ms. Macchio will serve on these committees until the 28th. So academics and programs is going to be chaired by Ms. Freight, and it'll include myself and Ms. Macchio. The Learning Environment and Culture Committee will be chaired by Ms. Heike, and Ms. Murray and Ms. Rosenleacher will be on that committee. The Communications and Community Engagement Committee will be chaired by Ms. Rosenleacher, and we'll have Ms. Murray and Ms. Freight. The Personnel and Leadership Committee will be chaired by Ms. Macchio, and Mr. Farrow and Rosenleacher are on that committee. And then the Finance and Operations Committee will be chaired by Mr. Farrow, and I will be on that committee along with Ms. Heike. Also have the board reps for the schools. At this time, Paddock, the board reps will be Ms. Rosenleacher and Ms. Heike. For Simons, it'll be Ms. Freight and Ms. Macchio. For middle school, it'll be Ms. Murray and Ms. Freight. For the high school, it'll be Mr. Farrow and Mr. Sislo. I do want to let the community know that we will be considering 3 appeals of the book review committee recommendation team at our next meeting as well, within the 30 days that we received that appeal. The books will be Identical, Tricks, and Push. The recommendation is to maintain the book in the library shelf as part of the self-selection collection in the library, and to add a parent or guardian permission requirement to the existing checkout procedure by flagging the book as such in the existing library system. Some of the appeals quoted Michigan law, so we will be speaking with the attorney in regards to that, as well as to answer the question at public comment in regards to the ACLU. They will also be providing an opinion regarding the ACLU letter. So we will be receiving guidance from them in regards to the laws that were quoted as part of this appeal, as well as the ACLU letter. With that, I don't have any other comments. Any other comments at this time? All right. The next order of business, I need a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Section 81A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, and upon the request of the employee for the purpose of conducting a periodic personnel evaluation.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Macchio.
It's been moved and supported to enter into closed session pursuant to 81A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, and upon the request of the employee for the purpose of conducting a periodic personnel evaluation. Just a reminder to everyone here, we will go into closed session. You are welcome to stay. The only order of business upon our return will be to vote on the rating for that review, and then we will adjourn. Any other comments regarding this motion? All right, it's been moved and supported to enter into closed session pursuant to Section 81A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, and upon the request of the employee for the purpose of conducting a periodic personnel evaluation. Ms. Heike.
Freight?
Yes?
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Rosenleacher?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Go into closed session at 8:40.